Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. Today we're going to be exploring something super interesting, something that might just change how you see your relationships.
Yeah, it really gets you thinking.
It's this psychological concept called the Ben Franklin effect. Have you heard of
Oh,
it?
absolutely. It's a classic.
So basically, and this is where it gets kind of weird, it says that doing someone a favor can actually make them like you more.
It does sound counterintuitive, right? Like you'd think you'd do favors for people you already like.
Exactly. You would think that, wouldn't you? But there's something else going on here.
Hmm.
And the story behind this whole idea, it comes from Ben Franklin himself.
Oh, yeah. Ben Franklin was all about this. He even used it strategically, like a social hack almost.
Wait, so Ben Franklin actually, did this in real life? Tell me more.
Okay, so picture this. Ben Franklin's in the Pennsylvania legislature, and there's this rival, this guy who really doesn't like him, right?
Okay, yeah, classic political drama.
But Franklin, he was a clever guy. He decides to try something different. He finds out this rival has a super rare book, something Franklin really wants to read.
I can already see where this is going.
So Franklin does the unexpected. He writes this polite little note to his rival, says how much he admires the book, and asks if he can borrow it.
Well, hold on. He asked a favor from the guy who hates him. That's bold.
And you know what? The rival, maybe he's caught off guard, he actually agrees, lends Franklin the book. And when Franklin returns it, he sends a really nice thank you note, all sincere and grateful.
So what, that's it? Just a book exchange, and suddenly they're best buds?
Well, not instantly, but that's where the shift began. The rival starts being nicer to Franklin, they start working together more, and eventually they actually become friends.
Wow, that's wild. Okay, so there's got to be more to it than just good manners, right? Like some psychological reason this works?
Exactly. It's not just politeness. There's this thing called cognitive dissonance happening in our brains.
Cognitive dissonance. Okay, that sounds a bit intense. What's that all about?
Basically, it means we don't like it when our actions and our beliefs don't match up. Like, if we do something that goes against what we think, it creates this mental tension.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. So if I'm getting this right, if we're nice to someone we don't like, our brain tries to make sense of it.
You got it. Our brain's trying to smooth things over, resolve that tension. So it might start thinking, well, wait, I wouldn't do them a favor if I didn't actually like them, would I?
Oh, I get it. So our brain kind of tricks us into liking them more to make sense of why we were nice to them.
Exactly. It's like our brain's trying to protect our own self-image, trying to keep things consistent.
That's so interesting how our brains work like that.
Yeah.
But is there, actual science behind this Ben Franklin effect?
Yeah.
Or is it just a cool historical story?
Oh, no, there's actual research on this. There have been studies that show this effect in action.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued. Tell me about these studies.
So there's one from 1969 by these researchers, Jecker and Landy. They had students do a quiz where they could win some money.
Okay, sounds like a fun experiment already.
Right. So after the quiz, some of the students who won were asked to return the money as a personal favor. Some were asked by the researcher directly, others by a secretary.
Interesting. So same favor, but different person asking.
Exactly. And guess what they found? The students who were asked directly by the researcher, they ended up liking the researcher more.
Oh, wow. Just because they did that favor for them. So doing a favor directly for someone really can make them like you more, even if you were strangers before.
That's what the research suggests.
Wow, that's pretty convincing. So this isn't just a one-time thing. This effect's been shown in different situations.
Right. There was another study, too, in 1971. This time, they had participants teaching actors how to tap out patterns on these wooden blocks. Some participants were told to be really encouraging, while others were told to be, well, kind of mean, actually.
Wait, hold on. They made some people be mean to these actors. That seems a bit harsh for a study.
Yeah, no, it sounds rough, but it was all controlled, for science. And the results, they back up the Ben Franklin effect again. Those who were nice to the actors, they rated them as more likable afterwards, but those who were mean, they rated the actors lower.
So even when you know the other person's just acting, how you act towards them still affects how you feel about them.
It seems that way. It really shows how powerful our actions are, how they shape not just how others see us, but how we see ourselves and those around us too.
This is mind-blowing. It makes you think twice about how you treat people.
It does, right. But we should also talk about other ways people explain the Ben Franklin effect. There are some different ideas out there.
Okay, yeah, let's hear those. What are some other explanations?
Well, there's this psychologist, Unaya, who thinks it might be more about reciprocation.
Reciprocation, like you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours.
Exactly. Naya says that when you ask someone for a favor, they see it as you trying to start a friendship, be closer to them. And then they feel like they should reciprocate, be nice back.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's like saying, hey, I trust you enough to ask for your help, and that can build a connection, even if it's subconscious.
That's the idea. It's like the subtle dance where the favor strengthens the bond, creates that back and forth.
This is all super interesting. But how do we actually use this knowledge in our own lives?
Hmm.
It's one thing to understand the theory, but how do we put it into practice?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? How do we apply this? Let's say you're in sales, trying to connect with a client.
Okay, I'm picturing myself selling some amazing new software, but the client's not quite convinced. How could I use the Ben Franklin effect here?
Instead of overwhelming them with all the features, what if you asked for their advice on something, like a challenge in their industry?
Oh, so instead of saying, look how great my software is, I could say, hey, you're really knowledgeable. What are your thoughts on this problem?
Exactly. It shows you value their expertise, it's a subtle compliment, and they feel helpful, which can make them more open to you and your product.
That's a great tip. And it's not just for sales, right? I can see this working in mentorship too.
Definitely. Instead of trying to pay back every favor your mentor does, what if you just focus on being a really good mentee? Acknowledge what they're doing for you,
Hmm.
be receptive to their advice.
That's a great point. It's about acknowledging the imbalance in that relationship and showing your appreciation through your actions, not keeping score.
Exactly. It's about building that genuine connection, that respect.
This really makes you think about how we approach relationships differently. It's like we're always trying to impress people, do big things for them, but maybe it's the smaller, more genuine interactions that matter most.
I think you're right. And this reminds me of something Dale Carnegie wrote in his book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. He talked about this too.
Oh yeah, Dale Carnegie, the master of human relations. What did he say?
He saw asking for a favor as a kind of compliment. It's like you're saying, hey, I admire what you can do. I think you're really good at this.
That's true. It changes the whole perspective on asking for help. It's not about being needy. It's about recognizing someone else's strengths.
And this brings up another interesting question. If doing favors for someone can make us like them more, what about the opposite? Do we dislike those we've wronged? Like, is there a flip side to this whole thing?
That's a really good question. So our brains try to justify our bad actions too, then.
Well, there's some evidence for that too. It seems like we do tend to dislike people we've treated poorly. It might be a way to reduce that cognitive dissonance again.
So it's like if we do something bad to someone, we tell ourselves they deserved it so we don't feel as guilty.
That's a way to look at it, yeah. It's like a coping mechanism to protect our self-image, but it can lead to some pretty messed up situations.
Wow, this has got even more complex. So this same Ben Franklin effect, it can create friendships, but it can also fuel like conflicts and bad feelings.
It highlights how our minds work. We're constantly trying to make sense of things, create a story that fits, even if it means distorting reality a bit.
This is all so thought-provoking. We started with Ben Franklin and a book, and now we're talking about cognitive dissonance and the darker sides of human nature.
It is quite a journey, isn't it? But it all points to one key takeaway. Our actions matter. They shape how we see the world and how we relate to others.
Well said, and it seems like this Ben Franklin effect is a lot more common than we realize. It's happening all around us in subtle ways.
Exactly. And understanding it, well, that gives us a new way to look at our relationships and interactions. It's like a hidden layer of communication.
This deep dive has been incredible, really eye-opening. Before we wrap up, though, I want to leave our listeners with something to think about, a question to ponder.
I like that. Something to keep the conversation going.
So here it is. We've talked about how powerful the Ben Franklin effect can be, but does it always work? Are there times when asking someone for a favor might actually backfire?
Ooh, that's a great question. I think it depends on the situation, on the people involved.
It's a reminder that human behavior is complex, right? There are always exceptions, things we haven't considered yet.
And that's the beauty of it all, isn't it? There's always more to learn, more to explore about ourselves and how we connect.
I love that. I hope everyone listening will think about this question and see if they can spot the Ben Franklin effect in their own lives.